on a side real quickly, I just want to point out that there is some serious issues. And Greg, you've alerted to me that there's a major shift actually happening to the Real News Network. Do you want to fill folks in about that before I say what I found?
Yeah, real quick. Max Blumenthal, of course, we've talked about Max Blumenthal in the past, the son of Sidney Blumenthal, and his, of course, Sidney Blumenthal's connections with the criminality of the Clinton family, and how Max is in previous days and previous years has actually, it seems, helped his father cover up and helped his father actually push the narrative that the Clinton State Department was pushing with regards to Libya, and then also with the Benghazi attacks later on. I think we've documented elements of that in some of our past shows. And but anyway, Max Blumenthal has a blog, a project, the Gray Zone Project, which is dedicated to countering and exposing Islamophobia. That was previously carried on the Alternet website, and now it is completely moved over to the Real News Network. So now Max Blumenthal, as well as his good pal Benjamin Norton, who's another player who kind of did a 180 on Syria, going from being a big time supporter of the rebels, the quote unquote rebels that were trying to remove Assad from power, to being an opponent of the attempts to destabilize Syria. They both are now officially in an official working capacity with the Real News, and I think this is worth keeping an eye on when you think about Max Blumenthal's recent criticism of, say, Democracy Now! And it almost appears to me that perhaps the Real News is being becoming almost sort of a platform for people on the left who are kind of disenchanted with like the coverage that, say, Democracy Now! Or the Young Turks are giving, and disenchanted with their overall perspective on things. So I think it'll be worth keep taking a look at the Real News Network here as time goes on here, and see their coverage of these issues and how it influences the left narrative. But I would say, yes, the Real News has been very much at the forefront of this confusion and this mislabeling and misinterpreting of the Russia narrative that has gone on. And Jeremy, you have some facts to share about some of the roots of the Real News real quick, I believe.
Yes, and the Real News came on the scene in about 2007, 8 in there, and increasingly it's become seen on the left as like the real Democracy Now! In some way, or something like that, where there are a much wider ranging conversations about some of the issues that Democracy Now! Might not cover. And I remember when Real News came on the scene that one of its big early topics was 9/11. Allegedly 9/11 truth, and it was interesting that some of their earliest videos, Paul Jay, the main founder of Real News, who's still at the helm, was very much going the route of what ended up being the sort of the 28 pages road down the road in terms of the Saudi involvement and the cover up of the Saudi role of in September 11th. But what's also interesting is that Real News has also been the site, the platform where someone like Max Blumenthal has led the way in an attack on activists and intellectuals like Gilad Atzmon, and in the work to try to drive him out of Palestinian solidarity circles and to try to not get the left to talk to him. And it was on Real News Network that Max Blumenthal, in conversation with Paul Jay, attacked Gilad Atzmon as an anti-Semite, I believe. August of 2013, Israel, anti-Semitism and negotiations without end. Max Blumenthal on Reality Asserts Itself. And we'll post all these links here, including Gilad Atzmon's response, Everything But Real News. And then there's also Christopher Bolin is basically one of the few other people who's really dug in a little bit to what the Real News potentially represents in terms of a platform. And we'll link this article to the Real Kosher News Network and the 9/11 cover-up, where he points out down the way the founders of the Real News Network, Rabbi David M. Ostreicher, left, and Paul J. Wright, have worked together for many years on films and the Canadian television network, the CBC. Ostreicher and J. are also the founders of the Hot Docs Film Festival. And so this is a whole, there's a whole wider range of facts here about Christopher Bolin's allegations about what they are not covering, whether this might be some form of Israeli-based propaganda, potentially even, these kinds of questions that Bolin is raising that are interesting and should be considered. But when you go into the business plan, the original business plan, I believe, of the Real News, you see that yes, David Ostreicher was originally on the board of directors. I don't believe he's there anymore. And I just noticed, and we'll link to this too, people should look through this document, but I just realized now that under Technology Advisory Committee is one Mark Lukovsky, the technical director of engineering at Google Inc. And this is the origins of the Real News Network. Okay, and what I just found out that I just want to put on the table, we won't go too deep into it, but I just want to put it on the table for researchers out there to look into and figure out what it might mean, is we reported last year about this Unit 9900 in the IDF. It's basically an intelligence unit to give autistic kids who otherwise wouldn't be able to make it into the Israeli army to have a role in doing some type of geospatial analysis, I believe. And I found another article that I hadn't seen before in the jewishnews.timesofisrael.com, Autism and the IDF, how a unique unit is ending exclusion. People with developmental disabilities can often be excluded from serving in the Israel army, but a special unit is changing that, by Jenny Fraser. And so it talks about this unit 9900, Roim Rashok. We've mentioned it before. And then in so doing, I was looking into what is the background and what is the story of Rabbi David Ostreicher, a clear, important figure in the origins of the Real News Network and an earlier close working partner of the still leader of the helm, Paul Jay. And I found a website called fullspectrummediacoaching.com. And on the homepage, it says, Embracing the Minds of 9900, Unit 9900, Our Story. Full Spectrum Media Coaching is a nonprofit organization that trains job coaches. FSMC gives the coaches the tools and skills to teach commercial video editing to young adults with autism spectrum disorder. So then you're like, well, what does this have to do with the Real News Network? So then you go to our team. You click on our team for Full Spectrum Media Coaching, where Unit 9900 is front and center. And our team, founder, executive director, Rabbi Ostreicher, started his preparation for the rabbinate as a producer and director of photography. Throughout the Cold War, Rabbi Ostreicher was in Afghanistan, as well as spending time with Jonas Savimbi in the jungles of Angola. He tracked Soviet and Cuban operatives in Europe.
Real quick, what I find really interesting about this is that Rabbi Ostreicher, the co-founder of the Real News, working with, and seems, Jonas Savimbi and keeping track of Soviet and Cubans, agents, I guess, who were acting to actually help the Angolan resistance to Jonas Savimbi and the American-backed regime in Angola, is that this flies directly in the face of the Real News's public stance as being a defender and as being of the what is called the Global South, the anti-imperialist movement globally. So I found that interesting.
Yes. So it says he tracks Soviet and Cuban operatives in Europe, the Mid East, and North America. I'll finish reading this, but does this sound like the background of your average rabbi slash TV producer, or does this sound like the background of some type of intelligence operative who definitely probably should?
I'll take the latter for 600, Alex.
So I'll keep moving on here beyond when he spent the Cold War in Afghanistan and tracked Soviet and Cuban operatives in Europe, the Mideast, and North America. Rabbi Ostreicher received his rabbinic ordination from Rav Dovid Shochet, the president of the Orthodox Council of Ontario in 2010. Also the founder of KosherTube, Rabbi Ostreicher has served as the senior consultant to CTS shows Messages and Passages. He has served on the executive committee of the Academy of Canadian Cinema and Television and is a past chair of the Canadian Independent Film Cactus, as well as a founder of the Hot Docs Film Festival. By the way, remember that's with Paul J. Rabbi Ostreicher is a member of the Directors Guild of Canada and a lifetime member of the Canadian Society of Cinematographers. He was a founding board member of Toronto Talmud Torah, as well as serving on the board of directors of William Lyon Mackenzie Co-op. His films and programs have been screened in more than 60 countries, garnering more than 40 international and Canadian awards, including 2 Geminis. Through Kosher Tube and now Full Spectrum Media Coaching, Rabbi Ostreicher takes advantage of his 5 decades of media experience to make this world a better place. Full spectrum media coaching, is that related to full spectrum dominance? I don't know. I also have a concept of full spectrum populism that I think we should embrace. But then before moving on here, back to the Johnstone article, in thinking through this sort of key player in the founding of the platform of Real News Network, which is key to the apparent debunking or poo-pooing of the Russiagate narrative, but also, as you described, an increasingly focal spot for some of the key players on the left. It says the administrative assistant, Moshe Ostreicher, a young adult, is able to identify with the age demographic our program targets. He completed high school with honors, graduating as an Ontario scholar, and went on to complete a gap year of learning in Israel. Moshe has several years of experience as a youth correspondent for Kosher Tube. Last year, while in Israel, he developed and launched a successful food business at his yeshiva. Okay, there's more of that, and I want to leave this aside for now. Oh, except for I want to point out that it's very clear that Unit 9900 was a key piece of their reasoning for starting this company. I'll just read this quickly. Okay, I'm going to get down to, okay, this is in their inspiration, our inspiration, close to the heart. The issue of lack of adequate programming and funding for adults with autism spectrum disorder is what inspired the founder, Rabbi David Ostreicher, to create Full Spectrum Media Coaching. The ultimate goal of this program is to help prepare both young and mature adults on the spectrum to move beyond the walls of the school into society, gaining self-esteem, a career purpose, and a greater degree of independence. Inspired by the initiative Intelligence Unit 9900 in Beersheba, Israel, Full Spectrum Media Coaching is a win-win for everybody involved, except for Palestinians and then the rest of the world, I guess, that doesn't want to be dominated by the Talpiot program. Unit 9900, the inspiration for Full Spectrum Media Coaching, is the IDF, Israel Defense Forces, Unit 9900. Special Intelligence Unit 9900 is dedicated to everything related to topographic image analysis, including mapping, interpretation of aerial and satellite photographs, and space research. Within this unit, there is a small unit of highly qualified soldiers who have remarkable visual and analytic capabilities. They can detect even the smallest details undetectable to most people. The uniqueness of this elite group in Unit 9900 lies in the fact that they are all diagnosed on the autism spectrum. Mm-hmm. Full Spectrum Media Coaching is the civilian application of Unit 9900 training program. Close to home in Ontario, Canada, we are also facing the global trends with an increased number of students with autism to have aged out of the school system. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. But to me, This is stunning.
Yeah. I will sum this up by saying that at the very least, I think that Paul J should at the very least should be questioned about this. And I think that it'd be very interesting, very revealing to get his answers to some of these questions. Everything from the Jonas Savimbi connection to all of this involved direct connections. It appears back to Israel and the Israel Defense Forces. But it will be very interesting to follow how the Real News Network helps to shape the narratives here in the near future here. So
yeah, and clearly people like Max Blumenthal and Benjamin Norton, who purport to be authentic leftists, I think should account for some of the origins of their new platform. So